What is up, everybody? Hunter with Lost Socket Garage here, and today we are taking a look at how to properly do floor pan patches, because there's a wrong way. Okay, so today we are doing a Coupe to Fastback conversion on a 67, third prize. There's a lot of other metalwork, obviously, that needs to be done on this car. So today I want to talk a little bit about patching. I've had some questions about how to properly patch, what to patch with, welding settings, all that good stuff. So we're going to try to cover some of that in this video. But first off, I want to show you the incorrect way to patch things. And I don't know out there who needs to hear this, but slapping a piece of metal over a rotted piece of metal and screwing it in with flathead screws is not the proper way to do a patch.
Dear sweet Lord baby Jesus, why? Why do people patch cars like this with fiberglass resin or epoxy or whatever the hell this is? Stop it! You make my job so hard! Stop it!
Now on this car, we've had a couple of instances where we've looked at like the quarter panel. The old quarter panel was actually sitting behind a new patch of quarter panel that they put on top. So we don't patch things that way. We cut it out and we do it correctly, because if you have an old piece of rotted metal and then you slap a new piece over the top, that old metal is still going to rot. It's going to add whatever the gauge metal that you're working with. It's going to add that to the outside, so your body and paint guy is going to hate you. And it's more structurally sound this way. Now, we've seen patches made out of license plates. We've seen patches made out of just straight Bondo. Fiberglass and resin, however, that's a little bit of a new one. So basically what they did on the passenger side in a couple of parts was they just threw a piece of metal down. Driver's side, however, is the true masterpiece, where it looks like fiberglass, kind of, but it looks like there was epoxy poured over it. It's actually on this side as well. I didn't even notice. And after time, this stuff just flakes off. Like, you're that far away from just putting your foot straight through. So today, let's talk about why you should patch things and how to patch things the correct way. Now, the majority of the time with these cars, you're going to have a couple of primary rust spots. And this is something that you should look into. Even if you're looking for a Coupe to Fastback conversion, you need to know if the floor is okay. Now, the floor is not necessarily a massive expenditure as far as replacing it if you're doing it yourself. So it's not terrible if your candidate has a bad floor, but there are some things to look for. So we have our seat riser in, but if there's this much rust here and here, you guarantee that underneath the seat riser, there's going to be just as much rust. There's a couple of ways to attack this. 90% of the time, right here, this floor to firewall is going to be rusted right at this seam. And sometimes it goes further up. Apparently on that side it did go further up, hence the extra fiberglass and more fiberglass. So you can get the floor to firewall patches from CJ Pony Parts, and they're really, really cheap. So that's easy. Floor pan. Now you have to look at this from a cost structure. Now if you have one side of your car, let's say that the driver's side, there's nothing wrong with it. It's complete metal. There's no rust. We're all good there. Then you look here and you say, okay, well, this whole area needs to be replaced. That's fine, because they actually make just single sides that you slide in, and you're gonna see that here later in the video. If you have to replace both sides, make sure that you do the cost analysis on it, because you can spend pretty easily $300 bucks, $350 on individual patching, or you can buy the entire floor, which is going to come all the way back here. It's going to cover your rear torque boxes, has this opening right here, gives you the full transmission tunnel, and goes all the way up to your floor to firewall patches. That's only like $400 bucks. So make sure that you look at it and say, okay, well, this is how much rust I have. Maybe I can just get away with a half. Or if you need both, chances are it's easier just to buy a whole new floor. Yes, you can swap a new floor into this car if you have a lift without cutting the roof off or cutting the floor in half. And we've done that before. We've proved it. We've done the science for you guys. So right now, next thing we're gonna do, we've established all the issues here. We have our patch pans that you're gonna see here in just a bit. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut away the majority of the metal here, and we're gonna work our way front to back. And we're going to take out a large piece of metal because we know that our tub comes up a certain amount. We're gonna take out the large piece of metal so that we can put the tub, sit it in, and get our exact lines that we need to cut so that we can just seam this straight up. So I guess we're gonna cue a montage. Okay, so we have the bulk cut out, and it makes it a little bit easier to set this pan in. Now, once the pan is in, you can see exactly where you're going to need to cut the rest of it out so that you can seam it. So basically, with this pan, zoom out a little bit, we're going to end up drawing a line right across here, and we're going to cut about a 1/2 inch below it so that we make sure we have a little bit of material left. This does not come with the bolt hole or the bracket for your seatbelt. So we're going to end up just cutting the bracket off from behind and then mounting it on here. But the big issue here is this floor to firewall. Since the floor pan sits on top of the firewall and the floor to firewall, we're going to have to go ahead and cut all that crap out and do our floor to firewall patch. You can get these from CJ Pony Parts. That's about the only place I've found them. And we're just going to cut out all the cancer and then set in our floor to firewall patch. We're probably going to try to butt it up right there under where the steering column is, all the way across the top. We're going to butt weld that, and then we'll be able to lay this pan in and cut out the residual. Now, there are a couple of decisions that you can make. Usually with these patch panels, they're going to give you some extra metal. This scenario, so the floor pan actually stops right about at this corner. They throw in a little bit of extra metal because it's very, very common for these floor to firewalls to be rusted out. But I think for this application, we might just cut it where the normal floor pan ends, right there, straight across, because we're going to have all new metal behind it. But we have to do that patch first before we can set that patch in. Onward! All right, we made some good progress on our floors. The time lapse didn't really cover us doing the floor to firewall patches. My phone was kind of glitchy, etc. So this is the end product. There definitely is some welding and a few things that touch up things that we need to do, but we actually have to have the car up and on a lift so that we can take the excess metal off and kind of clean it up underneath, and then, you know, go through and do all of our seam sealing. But these are the drop-in pans. We ended up trimming off a fair amount. You can barely see where the seam ends, but we ended up basically hemming it in right here, taking off a little bit of extra. We left about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch all the way around of old metal. And the reason we do that instead of butt welding is because this is structural. You have seats that mount in here. You have a person sitting in here. So I always feel a little bit better if there's a little bit more metal holding it. If it wasn't structural, I probably would have butt welded it. This is our floor to firewall patch. It turned out pretty nice. Let's see if we can get you guys in here. So floor to firewall patch turned out really nice. We ended up having to use the whole patch, and I'm trying to point something out. So where the steering column goes, right here we have a little bit of overlay. We still need to kind of cut that out, but we had to use a lot more of that patch than we thought we would, unfortunately. Same thing on this side. We used a lot of that patch, but honestly it ended up looking real nice, and now we can kind of move on to the next section, which is actually doing the conversion. So once we're able to do the conversion, and it can actually come off the jig, we'll throw it back on the lift. We're gonna take all of the old metal underneath where we patched everything. We're gonna hammer it up or trim it off, maybe throw in some more seam welds, and then we're going to seam seal the whole damn thing. You know, wherever we ended up welding, we're gonna seam seal. And that's really, really important for you to do seam seal, because you don't wanna have to do this again in, you know, 5-10 years, especially those floor to firewall patches. Now keep in mind that the order that you do these things in is very, very important. For example, we wouldn't be able to put in the new floor pan, the little tub, without actually doing the floor to firewall patch first, because it lays underneath the floor. So keep the order of things in mind when you're welding and when you're putting everything together. Leave a little extra metal if it's gonna be a structural weld. You know, a butt weld is going to be really easy. I typically do those on quarter panels. Some of the stuff that's in this video, though, you can use for all patches, basically. You know, so you're going to take your cancer spot. If my cancer spot is this big on, let's say, a quarter panel, I'm going to draw a line a couple of inches outside of that cancer spot, and then I'm going to cut my patch for that. I take the patch, and then I screw it to the old metal. And then once that patch is just screwed onto the old metal, I can actually cut out my patch, cut out the old metal around my patch that is attached to that panel. What that allows me to do is to get an exact measurement so that I can come in with these little things and butt weld, okay? So these are butt welding clamps. They have them at like Harbor Freight. These things are awesome because what they do is essentially they'll slide between the two panels and make sure that you're lined up like this so that you can tack around and then, you know, do your butt weld. This scenario, I didn't butt weld because, again, this is structural. People are sitting on it, etc. So I left a little bit of extra metal. Stop patching stuff with license plates and fiberglass and all metal and all of that crap. Just do it right the first time. It's actually easier the majority of the time. And in a scenario like this, also make sure that you really plan out your project, because in this scenario, it might have actually even been a little bit cheaper just to go with a one-piece full floor pan instead of you know, having the labor of cutting each one out and then welding each one in and doing all the fitment. Full floor pans are like $400. The only reason we didn't do it on this one was because the customer sent it with these drop-ins. And the transmission tunnel and the back seat, they're actually in pretty good condition, so we weren't too worried about it. But if you do have rust that goes into your back seat or on your trans tunnel at all, just get a full floor. It's worth the $400, and it's actually probably less labor. And for you Coupe guys out there, this car is a Coupe. I'm doing a full floor in it right now. You can actually, if you have a lift, you can actually push the full floor up through the back window once you take the old one out and then set it down like that. We've done it before. It is possible, so you don't have to cut your floor pan in half and then seam it or, you know, anything like that. It's holiday season, guys. I hope you have a wonderful holidays season. I hope you have a beautiful Christmas, Hanukkah, Happy New Year, etc. You guys are amazing. The support's been just fucking great over the past year. I get calls from people that, you know, follow us on YouTube saying that we helped out a lot. And it really makes us feel awesome that we're helping in any single way. So people like you, Carlos, people like you, Isa, you guys are studs. You all are awesome. Thank you so much for following along. If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely consider it. If you want to see more photos on this car and what it's going to look like as a fastback and once it's done, jump on our Instagram, jump on our Facebook. We'll post progress pictures, etc. Until next time, be with your loved ones over the holidays if you can. Spread joy. Don't be a dick. Do what you love. Most importantly, never be tamed. Peace.